People often say that the road to recovery can be a long and perilous journey, the circumstances of which can vary from things small as car accident to dealing with PTSD. It was often stated that physical wounds can heal over time, even if said wound results in loss of a digit or a limb. This rings true as, while the shock of losing your right hand or left arm can be debilitating to you, and eventually learn to cope with this physical limitation and carry on with your life. On the other end of the spectrum, psychological scars may take much longer, though. And you've seen and heard stories about soldiers returning home from Iraq or Afghanistan after having gone through some unimaginable hell war itself that it's always been. This could be due to the acts of people such as rolling an IED, having your friend killed right next to you, doing the unthinkable of having to kill a child soldier, etc. But those were the easiest examples. Even every day, people still suffer from the same form of mental scarring, whatever it be from a home invasion, a serious accident, or in the case of a certain white-haired boy, heavy dose of blunt trauma, like from the likes of which he had never experienced until one Sunday afternoon. The Louds even Clyde hopes that one day those scars will fade, enough the chances of the event occurring seem unlikely as the days go on. Didn't help that it was very clear that everyone in the family had some personal demons to deal with. But at this point, despite how uncomfortable the Louds were discussing their inner feelings, or reaching to the conclusion that something was wrong with them, there was one thing that they could all agree on. They were in this together, and they would see it through the end. After returning home on Sunday, Rita informed Lynn Sr. about what Miss Lopez had told her. Much like the monarch, the father was no bitter spirit upon hearing this. All of his children had something going on. The only person spared in this whole debacle was Lily. It was mostly because of her extremely young age, but that itself was debatable. A 15-month-old infant unable to do anything but watch her family was falling apart. Despite her age, Lily was a fast learner, hence why she had a scornful at her sisters for the past week and a half. Whenever her sisters would try and hold her, Lily would get fussy and want to be put down. On some nights, she preferred to sleep in her parents' room than bunk with Lisa. However, this changed following Lincoln's diagnosis. No one was sure what brought up this change. Maybe it was Lily seeing Lincoln hurt, or it might have been the fact that he accidentally tossed her in the air during his first panic attack, or saw how scornful her sisters looked when they realized that Lincoln was afraid of them. At that point, Lily knew her sisters regretted their actions, and they were hating themselves for it. She couldn't fully form sentences yet. But if she could, she'd tell them that didn't hate them. However, maybe there was something she could do for them. After all, Lily was the only sister Lincoln trusted. As for the parents, they decided to wait till Monday to discuss everyone's therapy sessions, including their own. The girls were given notification prior to that day, causing many to sleep restlessly. Mixed emotions ran through the family that night. A few being nervous, with another group wanting to nip their problems in the bud. Lisa and Lucy felt indifferent, but thought it would be nice to reveal their inner problems. Needless to say, Monday afternoon was a realization and a heartbreak. There was no debate on the tale on what was more depressing or surprising, as everyone was generally shocked about hearing what was discussed during each session. It was quite jaw-dropping to hear that your own roommate had a serious problem, but never picked it up despite sharing the same room for the few years. From Lori's fears and insecurities to Lisa's feelings of isolation, many tears were shed that night by everyone. Perhaps the only person whose feelings weren't so too surprising was Luann's. As she told everyone her problem the day before, it took a few months after everyone had spoken to digest all of that information. Quite a few of the sisters came to the realization that they had similar problems. Lucy, Lisa, and Lola had suffered from isolation as a result in pursuing their interests. Lori and Lenny wished to be viewed differently. Luann and Lynn had to deal with their fair share of bullies in schools. and Luna and Lana couldn't help but feel like they seemed the normal out of the pack. These two girls didn't seem to have any problems with them, besides the fact that they let their anger take over and utterly demolished their brother. However, there was that issue that they started to share with the other girls. When it came to the acting as a single group, if something caught their eye, when the parents' heartbreak was too soft word for them, the adults felt as if it was someone to break their hearts, smash them into pieces with a hammer, then used a heavy hitter post pounder, rub salt on the wound. The fact that the kids had these too many problems and were so blind not to realize it, it made them feel that they really were failures as parents, despite what Miranda had brought them up during their sessions. They could have all gotten Lucy some proper help, but chalked it up as a phase when it was much more of a serious issue. They tried to hide the fact that they kept slipping Lenny's pills when it was quite in fact aware of this. In the case of Lola, Rita felt that she was responsible why her 6-year-old had developed such a mean personality. And to top it off, the parents had to admit that they felt closer to a few of their kids than others, despite not wanting to pick favorites. Lynn Sr. spent 20 minutes crying non-stop, preaching about how he was a failure of a father, while the rest of the family tried to calm him down. Not only that they were in better shape, but as the rest were struggling not to cry themselves. This is why Miranda recommended the family to disclose this comfortable environment, as it'd be extremely awkward to discuss family matters in a public setting. Least the Louds wanted everyone to look at them strangely. Their psychologist didn't say this to the family, as she wanted them to figure it out for themselves. But there was one important lesson that comes with these kids in their moments. When a bridge is broken, you can always rebuild it. It wasn't spoken out loud, but if the Louds were asked the question, "Do you feel closer to each other than before?" the answer would be an obnoxious yes. After Monday, it felt as if life returned to once quiet abode. While the girls were still unable to do much of due to their restrictions, they spent that time trying to forge sibling bonds that had been strained for quite some time. For Lucy, since it was clear that writing was an outlet for her depressed state, Lynn Sr. decided it was relevant to return the poem book to her. Last thing he wanted was his daughter to spiral even further, enforced by the fact that the Pardutch was reminded of one of the times he left his little girl home alone. An 8-year-old wasted no time in tearfully hugging her father before she let a few words flow from her mind into the pages. The rest of Lucy's stuff was still in storage, but she could live with that. But it was all not sit very well. While Lucy did enjoy talking to Lynn more than she used to, it was evident in her writing that she was constantly drawn to the one family member that wasn't with them. "So, Lincoln, how does it feel to finally get out of this place?" Clyde asked, packing some of Lincoln's stuff into a bag. The white-haired boy let out a sigh of relief. He changed to his regular clothes. "Just glad it's finally over. I hate being bedridden for almost a week, even though Dr. Phillips finally let me walk around a little when my pelvis was good enough. I still felt..." Lincoln paused, moving his arm sling slightly and tightening a bit as his lefty to keep it bent before trying to use said limb to pull his sleeve. "Trapped, I guess?" Lincoln grunted as he felt his move his arm further, only to end up getting stuck halfway. He laughed nervously. "Hang on." Clyde walked over and pulled Lincoln on his arm while Lincoln tugged his own shirt. "Ow, ow, ow!" Lincoln yelled as his arm was finally pulled through. He frowned at his own busted wing. "Guess I can't bend it all the way." "Don't worry, Lincoln. Good news is that at least it's the body part that needs to heal." Clyde swung the bag over his shoulders. "Bad news is, a broken arm like yours could take months to heal. And you say your elbow joint was bent the wrong way, right?" Lincoln shuddered a little. "Yeah." "Then, of course, you're still not feeling any pain down there, are you?" Lincoln shook his head. "No, not really. I mean, I guess if I hold it in for too long, I might feel a little pain. But for the most part, I don't have any issues going to the can." Clyde caught his best friend while staring at the damaged limb. Appearing to be more lost in thought, the nerdy child knew about Lincoln's mental health, and it was no doubt helping that it would constantly be reminded of how given the white-haired male received the said injury. The African-American put a hand to Lincoln's shoulder. Lincoln, I know you're hurting more on the inside than the outside, and I know what you're thinking. You know who, but this is why you're coming home with me and my dad's, remember? They can't hurt you as long as you're with us. Not like I think they will, since they clearly are sorry for the whole ordeal. But if you can help me get through with the issue, Clyde then stopped himself before he could finish his word. My crush, then I can help you get over your fear. Lincoln bit his bottom lip. Thanks, Clyde. I appreciate the help, but I just don't know. Even after I spoke with Dr. Lopez on Sunday, I still keep seeing them in my dreams. He brought a hand to his head. Like on some nights, I would just stay awake because I think they might sneak up into the hospital and hurt me during the night. Also, we tried to helping you get over my older sister, but that didn't work. Weren't you taking any sleeping pills? Clyde inquired. Lincoln shook his head. I did at first, but memories of certain nightmare came to mind, sending a shiver down his spine. Say no more. Like Dr. Lopez says, if you don't want to talk about it, I won't force you. So, he grabbed another arm sling that was on the bed. Ready to put your new cast on? Lincoln nodded and then began to remove his old one. The old one he kept in the hospital was simple dual strap that went around his arm in 2 spots. His new one was all black with a single adjustable strap that came with the full cast that covered his arm completely. It was much more durable in the event that he accidentally landed on his bad arm again, and he was supposed to be wearing it every day until told otherwise. A knock at the door was heard before Lynn Sr. opened the door. Ready to go, boys? Yep, just finished getting everything settled, Clyde said as Lincoln finished adjusting to his sling. 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks long before Lincoln could finally say goodbye to the place. He had to put up with sitting in the bed doing nothing, eating stale food, which thankfully ended when his dad started bringing him cooked meals. On some nights, being left alone by himself made him quite antsy. He was too embarrassed to admit it, but Lincoln had wet himself at least 2 more times due to night terrors. He hasn't told anyone about them, but his parents could see the distress on his face. But Lincoln's stay at the clinic wasn't all bad. On Sundays, the boy would spend his time walking around in the hospital. His doctor's suggestion, it was the best way to help him get the form of exercise to keep his leg active. On some of those walks, he was accompanied by one of his best friends, or even both, such as on Wednesday. They both stopped by the baby room, swinging at the newborns as they couldn't resist their cuteness, while Clyde and Lincoln did while Ronnie Ann just stood next to them, although she was secretly cooling as well. Sadly, they ended up waking the babies and caused a massive crying fit, getting them into trouble. Once Lynn Sr., Lincoln, and Clyde got to the lobby, they were greeted by Howard, Harold, Rita, and baby Lily. Oh, I'm so glad you're finally getting out of here, Rita said as she hugged her son. Yeah, better than sitting in the same room all day, Lincoln replied, hugging her back. Oh, and before I forget, Rita took out a couple of school textbooks. Since you've missed 2 weeks of school, we let your teachers know that you were in an accident, so you only have a week's worth of homework to catch up on. Lincoln gave an exasperated sigh. Don't worry, buddy. I still remember everything we went through this week, so you'll have time to make up for a couple of tests. I guess I should have expected that. So you're sure you guys have everything covered? Lynn Sr. asked the McBride fathers. Don't worry, we got the guest room all perfectly set up, and since you brought some of Linky's stuff over, he'll feel like he's at home in no time, Harold stated proudly. I hope that's good term for that phrase, the loud partridge stated worryingly. Don't worry, Lynn. If Lincoln has nightmares, we have something that would help. It works great with Clyde, Howard quipped. He always did fall right back to sleep when we sang him that lullaby, Harold agreed. Lincoln looked at Clyde quizzically, who gave a nervous smile in response. So, how long do I have to stay with the McBrides? The ash-haired child asked. As long as you need, Lincoln. We can't risk you getting hurt again. Plus, I just think you being around the house might cause your problems to act up, Lynn Sr. pointed out. But what if someone sneaks into the house and tries to drag me back? Lincoln asked uneasily. Lincoln, Rita spoke, no one is going to bring harm to you ever again. We'll make sure of that. The serious look on his mother's face was enough to calm his nerves. Okay, thanks, Mom. Lincoln hugged her again. In the hospital's parking lot sat Vanzilla, which had a clear view of the front entrance. Inside the car sat 9 occupants, eyeing like hawks. It had been 30 minutes since the loud parents went inside, and the girls were anxious to see their brother back to his normal self. Well, as normal as he could be, Rita and Lincina were hesitant to let the rest of the daughters come along, but they promised to stay in the car since the potential of Lincoln even hearing them could send him to a panic. What's taking so long? I thought that stupid doctor said Linky was good to walk out, Lola growled. Her patience was wearing thin. Lisa breathed a little hot air in her glasses to clean them. Relax, dear sibling. If Lincoln has officially been discharged, on average it takes a patient up to an hour before they're ready to evacuate the premises. The door's opening, Lenny shouted. Is that him? To her dismay, it was just another family walking out with an elderly relative. Never mind. Dudes, just be patient. Little bro would come out walking there in no time. Besides, I don't think we're too rough on him, Luna suggested. Well, I guess it could have been a lot worse, since some of the injuries I got from doing sports, Lynn added. True, he wasn't in a full body cast, Lucy piped up. Lori gave a low sigh. Yes, but he'd still be missing a canine, molar, and an incisor. I'm surprised that none of us didn't knock out his chipped tooth. Lola sank into her seat upon hearing that. After a few more minutes, the girls' patience was finally awarded. Ducking down in their seats, they peeked up just enough to get a good glance at the window. Lincoln with their parents and the McBrides, and the boy appeared to be waving goodbye to Lily. The girls glad they just appeared that most of the injuries had been cleared up. The only obvious one remained was his arm. Lynn groaned at the guilt, knowing that her brother would be carrying that injury with him for weeks. They couldn't blame their sister for being so cute, and they were a little envious that Lily was the only sibling allowed to be getting with the spitting distance of Lincoln. Soon the families went their separate ways. The McBrides parked further down, taking Lincoln with them. The Loud sisters continued to watch them until they were no longer within eyesight, only barely paying any attention with their parents returning to the car. Rita strapped Lily into her car seat, while Lynn Sr. started the car. So, Lori began, how is he? Good news, he's pretty much fine physically. He just needs to wear that cast for another month, Rita said, finished strapping the baby before getting in the front passenger. The bad news is he's getting nightmares, the father finished. And I'm not sure about it, but I think him being anywhere near the house might send Lincoln to a frenzy. Well, at least now that he's out, he could talk with Dr. Lopez, right? Lana suggested. That is true. I'll need to call and schedule an appointment. Rita fished out her phone into her purse. But I don't think she can get to him this weekend, though. She's booked. Mother, did you tell Lincoln that I had taken the liberty of completing his coursework of his absence? The child prodigy asked. Nope, according to Miss Lopez, he was rather iffy when she tried to convince him that his fears was just in his head. I'm not sure what exactly Lincoln thinks about it when it comes to you girls, but it seems to be along the lines that he doesn't trust you, even if you tell him you're sorry, Rita replied. Luna brought a hand to her face as she gave a low sigh. Great, so even if we apologize to Bro, he'll just think we're lying to him. How are we supposed to help Lincoln get over his fear when he is hardwired to self-destruct? So he can't see us in person, but talk to him over the phone? Lenny asked. Everyone's eyes grew wide at that suggestion. It seemed like a good idea. Talking to someone over the phone could grant more security of meeting someone face to face. Back when Lynn tried talking to him, he only flipped out due to getting close to him. But he appeared to be calm, and she was a decent distance away. Lynn Sr. rubbed his chin. That could work, but we aren't sure if that will help. I think it's best to wait until Dr. Lopez gets a good idea on how we can handle this. And speaking of which, since it's the weekend, Lynn, Lucy, Lola, Lana, what I am going to say is very important. All four girls listened at their father intentionally. Since Lincoln will be attending school again, I want you girls to make sure that he doesn't see or hear you. We don't want him to make him paranoid. Well, more so he might since you all attend the same school. Yes, Dad, they all agreed. Hiding from Lincoln won't be an issue for me, Lucy stated. You three, on the other hand. What is that supposed to mean? Lola asked in an eerie tone. Well, Lola, you can be pretty loud, and sometimes you like to make your presence felt. Lynn is on the same boat, and Lana, well, she might be fine. If Lincoln doesn't go anywhere near trash cans or dumpsters, the 8-year-old pointed out. That wouldn't be difficult since I'm not allowed to get dirty, Lana pointed out. Me and Quiet don't go to the same sentence, Lynn bemused. But I don't want the big bro to think that I'm breaking his good arm. But what am I supposed to do? The princess former whined. Lana gave her a small smirk. Sometimes you just gotta step out of your comfort zone, sis. Lola's eyes went wide. She remembered the last time Lana said those exact words. Oh no, I'm totally not doing what you're suggesting. Just saying, if you can't hide in a locker or in a bathroom, you gotta hide somewhere. Lola growled in anger before giving a sigh in defeat. Fine, but only because I love Lincoln. After getting to the house, the McBrides were quick to get their white-headed boy settled in. Most of his stuff was there, so it felt like his room was a bit at home, a bit much larger and a lot more walking space. Lincoln spent much of his time rummaging through the suitcases to put his undies in the dresser, his clothes in the closet. He even found his red 1 million Fred Count Victory undies. Lincoln smiled, remembering how he got said underwear. Unfortunately, it felt like it was one of the only times his 6-year-old sister would feel sorry for him. Given a saddened look, he placed the undies in the dresser before hearing a purring sound. Turning to the door, Lincoln locked eyes with Clyde's pet cat, Cleopatra. The boy grew nervous upon recognizing her. Unlike her little sister, Cleopatra was known to be very feisty. She certainly lived up to that accusation last time Lincoln visited their house. It was definitely not a fun time Fred treating those claw marks. He hadn't done or anything to set her off. The house cat walked in the room, tail curled upwards. Lincoln stood completely still, fearing for the slightest movement would irritate her, or he thought that if he didn't move, she wouldn't see him. However, stuff like that only works in the movies. Fortunately, Lincoln's accusation was wrong. Cleopatra simply strolled up to him and rubbed her head against his leg. The boy smiled, seeing that she was just trying to be friendly. "Ah, you're not such a bad kitty, huh?" He knelt down and petted her head. Cleopatra meowed in response. "Hey, Lincoln, ARG is about to start," Clyde called from the hallway. "You coming?" "Oh, heck yeah!" The boy took off after his former best friend. The rest of the day was spent like any other weekend. The boys watched their favorite shows, discussed about some Ace-Savvy comics. At one point, Lincoln noticed it was getting late, and he nearly had the urge to voice that he needed to get home. It was out of habit, of course. He quickly reminded himself that he was staying over. Dinner was also another joyful affair. The 11-year-old wasn't sure who was cooking was better, but he considered his dad pro chef, but Howard knew how to cook a mean roast. Plus, it felt like to eat something other than succotash every Saturday. It wouldn't be until another few hours of gaming, with 20-minute rules between, before Lincoln finally got tired and ready to go to bed. Clyde bid him a good night, before making sure that Lincoln would be okay as he slept. In all honesty, Lincoln wasn't so sure himself. It was only on a few scarce nights where he got decent sleep without some night terror waking him up, and he hopes that this would be one of those nights. Sleeping into his PJs, Lincoln turned lights off and just laid on the bed. Cleopatra just sat on the windowsill, staring out in the dark streets. The chip-toothed male just stared at the ceiling what seemed like hours, even when his vision started to get blurred in his tired eyes. Soon enough, Lincoln was finally in a relaxed state to fall asleep. For a few hours, Lincoln snored softly, shifting into a more comfortable position. He hadn't noticed that his bed was beginning to rock back and forth steadily. The swaying started to get worse, along with something beginning to hit Lincoln's face. At first, it only irritated him a little, and the boy just scratched his face without opening his eyes. Soon he opened to see something cold and drenched and him in the bed. Gah! Lincoln shouted. All the fun sudden rushed into sleep. Wiping his face, he looked around to find that his bed was out in the middle of an ocean, in a raging storm. Well, what? How did I get here? I need another favor from you, a voice spoke out. Looking around, Lincoln saw what looked like a research ship close to where he was. The fear in Lincoln's eyes was clear as day. His pupils shrank to the maximum as they became as big as they could get. Lisa? The said trial prodigy was leaning on the railing of the ship. Yes, I need you for another test of mine, dear sibling. You see, I accidentally turned the rest of our four sisters into aquatic life, and while I try to find the way to reverse the effects, I have to keep them fed. So you can't feed them fish food from a pet store? Negative. Such feeding nutrients wouldn't provide them enough sustenance, as they required larger prey to feed on, particularly something. Lisa's voice grew sinister. Human-sized. Well, what? Lincoln started before being bumped against the bed. Looking over, the boy could see a small gray dorsal fin poking out of the water. Oh, and I should mention, they like it when their prey struggles, Lisa added. Seconds later, a small shark, what looked like Lola, jumped out of the water, its teeth bared. Lincoln screamed and ducked, letting the fish pass mere inches from his face. Another shark, one bit larger, jumped out of the water halfway. It was completely black with red, demonic eyes. If Lincoln had to guess, this was probably Lucy, thrashed back and forth, biting at Lincoln before sinking her teeth into the bed. The shark slipped and took part of the frame with it. You turned them into sharks? Lisa shrugged. I tried octopi, but shark DNA was more readily available. Lincoln held one of the bedposts to dear life as the waves was getting rougher. A few more sharks bumped the bed, trying to overturn it. One rammed the headboard, causing him to fall back in front of the bed. Lincoln had managed to catch up with the footboard before he ended up being tossed into the waves. He squinted a little as he saw something coming up. It was another shark, which sent the boy screaming as he bolted in the opposite direction. Said shark looked like Luna, who bit the area where Lincoln's head was clean off. Why, Lisa? What did I do to deserve this? Oh, I think you know the answer to that, Lincoln, Lisa said, as she twirled the pen in her fingers. I usually collect people who wouldn't be missed if you feed to the girls. You are no exception. Yet another shark jumped out of the water. You actually landed on his bed. This one was quite similar to Lori, snapping the teeth, which every way wiggling around to try to reach her prize. Lincoln grabbed one of the bed pillows desperately to beat Lori with the soft object. It didn't do much but to piss her off. Lori caught the pillow and ripped it into shreds. She was about to bite Lincoln's leg when one of Lincoln's sisters smashed into the bottom of the bed, causing it to topple back into the sea. Snot and tears were running down Lincoln's face, and the onslaught of death continued to peck at him. Just why? Why does it have to be me? What I did was just an accident. Lisa scoffed. Oh, please, dear boy, there are no such things as accidents. Look, Lisa, I'll do whatever you want. I don't want to die, Lincoln begged. Anything you say. The 4-year-old looked at her brother. Then do me a favor. Let go. She spoke in a dark, uncaring tone. Immediately following that statement, the bed was hit with enough force to break the frame entirely. Lincoln screamed in terror as he was sent flying, landing in the dark, murky waters seconds later. The boy shot off to the surface as quick as he could, spitting out any water he accidentally breathed in. The 11-year-old panted before a large wave crashed down on top of him, disorienting him as he swirled under the water. Just as Lincoln tried to right himself, he screamed out in pain when something bit in his left arm. A Lenny shark had grabbed on a hold of him and was trying to wrestle his limb off. Let go of me! Please let go! Lincoln yelled in despair. He was brought back up to the surface before literally being thrown in one direction. When this was happening, Lincoln heard the distant sound of flesh and bone being broken and torn. He was tossed around in the air before landing in the water once more. Looking to his right, the boy was horrified to see that his entire right arm was gone, only leaving bits of flesh to dangle. His blood poured into the water. letting the other sharks hone on the position. Lincoln was completely defenseless of what was to come. His working only arm was gone, and he couldn't use his other arm because it was still in the cast, and the only thing he managed to do was focus on trying to keep himself afloat. "So someone help!" Lincoln spoke in a weak tone. Bloodlust was starting to get to him. He didn't know what would kill him first, drowning or being ripped into pieces. It looked to be a latter as a Luan shark sped at him, bites onto the side, forcing Lincoln to cry out in agony. She dragged him under the water, the boy's air bubbles leaving a trail. As the other sharks closed in, Lincoln's view became darker as he started blacking out, tears streaming from his face as the predators dove in for the kill. Just like Rosa's sharp teeth were about to devour him, Lincoln felt something hard hit him in front. Lincoln groaned in pain, opening his eyes steadily as he found himself back in the McBride's guest room. And on the floor, Cleopatra looked at him weirdly on top of the bed, having to watch the boy throw a fit in his sleep before slipping off the mattress. Lincoln rolled onto his back, pain shooting right through his right arm as it throbbed for a few moments. At least this confirmation he was still in one piece. Lincoln started to sniffle a bit as he thought about the traumatic experience. He had to admit that this was probably the most weird dream so far, but it was tied with the last one he had in terms with the sheer terror. Tears began to stream down the white-haired child's face. Before Lincoln curled up into the floor, he started to cry to himself. He couldn't seem to catch a break at all. All he wanted was a decent night's sleep, and he couldn't even get that before his mind would start playing tricks on him. He couldn't even... Cleopatra, who had just jumped down from the bed and rubbed her head against Lincoln's shoulder in an attempt to soothe him. His cries got loud enough to the point that it woken Clyde and his dads. If they weren't aroused from the sudden impact to the floor, opening the door, they saw Lincoln curled up onto the ground. His bed sheets and pillow were randomly strewn about. The poor boy was letting his troubled soul pour out into the world. Clyde immediately went up to ask his friend if he was all right, but Lincoln wouldn't respond. The next few hours were spent pulling the scared child out of his crying fit.